Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Melissa S., Pib Extra, Matt aka Stormageddon, Gilmer, Stephen P., and Mr. Biscuits have all been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer. On this episode of Still Loading, Live Alive, 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 Alive. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today's episode, it is actually, I should look at my schedule. Is it episode 1, 2, or 3 of Backlog Month? It is episode 2 of Backlog Month. Should have had that up beforehand. We're flying by the seat of our pants already, y'all. We are here to talk about another RPG. This Backlog Month is very RPG heavy. I shouldn't say another RPG. This is the first one you're hearing in this series, but there's 3 RPGs in Backlog Month this year, and the first one here, if you couldn't tell by my confusing tagline, is Live Alive, or as some people say, Live Alive, but I think we know for a fact it's live. Actually, I have no damn idea, but we're going to say definitively on this podcast, it is Live Alive. And joining me to discuss Live Alive, first-time guest on the show. They are a Twitch streamer, and I'm very happy to have them on the show. Been looking forward to this for a while. Happy Bear from their Twitch channel. Happy, how are you doing today?
Josh, hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Happy Bear. My pronouns are she, her. I am doing well today. I went and explored a new coffee shop, a new cafe.
Ooh.
I have a habit of trying to hit all the good cafes in my city, where I am right now, and it's led me to some really good coffee. My favorite place is a Yemeni cafe, and they play Yemeni pop music, and they have the best
Yemeni
iced chai
music
that I've ever tasted in my life. So
Yemeni, I'm still hung up on Yemeni pop music. That's very interesting to me.
It is. Yeah, it's not a genre that I've typically gotten into, but it's really cool, really fun. I don't know much about it. I just know that I like going to the cafe and drinking in the ambiance. No pun intended. Well, maybe a little bit intended. But other than that, have been really looking forward to talking about Live Alive. I wouldn't say that it's one of my favorite RPGs, but it is in my hall of very good. It is a solid 8.5 out of 10. Great game. Another God tier soundtrack from Yoko Shimomura.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. So yeah, very much been looking forward to talking about this with you tonight, Josh.
Thank you for coming on the show. I've been looking forward to this as well. And you were mentioning coffee. I was telling you off mic, I'm drinking some coffee, and that was making me feel shame. All I'm doing is I have a hazelnut coffee and Coffee Talk brought to you by Still Loading. And what I do, though, is I don't put cream and sugar in it. I put hot chocolate mix.
Ooh.
So I get like a hazelnut mocha without actually having to go to a cafe or anything like that.
That sounds delicious.
It's really nice. It's because hazelnut isn't. I'm definitely not a coffee connoisseur by any stretch of the imagination. The more milk in my coffee, the better. The less I can taste the bitterness, the better. So the hot chocolate kind of drowns out a lot of that. But hazelnut, it's always a little bit lighter of a roast. I've noticed, like, just because every time I try anything else, I'm like, oh, this tastes so much more like coffee than the hazelnut does. So, props to hazelnut. That's my go-to. Once again, know goddamn nothing about coffee. I don't even know if I used the term roast correctly in that sentence, but I'm going to pretend like I did. Anyway, we are here to talk about Live Alive. Yeah, let's get right into it then. I when I first was trying to find a guest for this, I actually had a guest lined up, and they I let them know like a couple months ago, like, hey, I'm going to start playing it. They're like, actually, I'm out of podcasting. I'm like, all right, that's cool, I'll find someone else. And I put a call out to Blue Sky, and Happy here was one of the people that responded, and I'm so happy, no pun intended, that she did. Or maybe pun intended, who knows. So I want to throw it over to you, Happy, and just kind of learn a little bit more about how you first got into this game and when you first played it.
Yeah. So by the way, Josh, I'm so glad that you reached out on Blue Sky. Blue Sky has been so fun for connecting with people. As far as how I got into this game, honestly, I think the first I ever heard of it was when I was a little girl. And we were talking about vgmusic.com before we started recording. And I think I saw some of the music on there and was like, that's a weird name for a video game. And I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't click on the music because that time in my life, I was just kind of discovering the Nintendo classics for the first time. The great Super Nintendo OSTs. Anyway, I didn't really think about it again for another, however long, couple decades. And then I was reading on Polygon back when Polygon was still, an actual journalism rag that.
Yes.
Yeah, that was so painful, boy, when they started firing everyone. That was really painful. But back when I still enjoyed reading them, then they did an article about a remake of Live Alive that was coming out, and I thought, wow, I've been curious about this game for so long, ever since I, heard about it on vgmusic.com, but I don't know much about it. And then the more I read, it said there's 7 different time periods, sort of 7 little mini stories that you experience. I thought, wow, what an interesting structure for a video game. And so I put it on my to playlist on my stream. We love playing RPGs on my Twitch stream. And then right around the time it came out, I launched Discord for my Twitch community. And I named the live channel, just pinging people when I went live. I called it Live Alive, just because I thought that it was clever and funny.
Yeah.
And so then I had people starting to ask, well, have you played Live Alive? And I said, no, I just thought it was a funny name. And then my friend Scala Kitty, Z wanted me to play it and kept kind of bugging me about it in a very respectful way, but just, hey, Happy Bear, I know that you'd really like this game. When are you going to play it? And finally, last year I said, all right, April 2024, this is the time I'm going to play Live Alive. So we started it in April, and I think we finished it early June because it took a little bit longer than I thought it would for reasons.
It's a longer game than you'd expect.
We'll talk about later. Anyway, we had a really good experience with it. I actually got my 1,000th Twitch follower while I was playing Live Live.
That's awesome.
So that was fun. So it'll always have a special place in my heart for that reason. And I don't know, I thought that the settings were really cool. I really like the HD 2D graphical style. I think that's really fun. It's still the only game that I've played in that style. I own Octopath Traveler. I haven't played it. It's on my backlog, my ever expanding backlog.
Yes.
Which I really should be playing, but I just end up doing one more run of Slay the Spire. And anyway, so I don't know. I just really liked the graphics. I loved the music. I enjoyed the story for the most part. And at the end of it, I just came away thinking, this is a really great game that is held back by having a very long third act that overstays its welcome. And
we'll get into that.
That's my bite-sized review of the game, Josh, but we'll delve more into it, I'm sure.
For myself, I first heard about it through the Retronauts podcast. Bob Mackey, one of the hosts of Retronauts, did an episode on Live Alive, and I was just really interested in it. And I remember this was before the remake was ever announced. I think it was like, they must have done that episode in like 2015, 2016, wow. Right? So like it's been a while. So they did an episode on it, thought it was kind of cool. And then when Square announced it a couple of years ago that they were doing an HD 2D remake of it and finally bringing the game over to North America, I was like, holy shit, I gotta try this. So I actually pre-ordered this and never got around to playing it until my wonderful patrons voted on it for Backlog Month. Thank you once again, patrons. And I guess to shout it out right at the very top of the episode, this is the only game for Backlog Month that I did not complete. I got to the finish line, y'all, and this game just burned me out. It is a very long, unwieldy ending, and we'll get into all of that once we get to it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my personal experiences with it. I hadn't played it beforehand, heard about it from Retronauts, and jumped into it for this episode, and here we are. So why don't we get into the game in earnest then, right? Let's talk about it. I want to start off actually with I want to start off with the gameplay, specifically the battle system in this, because this is something I really wasn't expecting. I was expecting a very standard like Final Fantasy Squaresoft type of vibe to it, and this is not like that at all. Really, it's got its own unique twist, and I think the battle system is very interesting because since it's a kind of a grid-based like checkerboard almost, where you can just to describe it real quickly, you do have an active time battle gauge that's going, and you can move. You can do an action whenever that bar has gone up. You can start moving, but you can move infinitely. You don't have to it's not like you get one movement. If it's your character's turn, then you can move them around the grid as much as you want. And time, the enemy's grid or to active time will still be going on. So if you're good at it, you can actually like literally run away from an enemy and their time will go up and they can't do a move because you're not out in their range or you're not in the range of any of their attacks. So it creates a really interesting dynamic where it's like, if you really want to play it like a standard Final Fantasy, you can just go right up next to the dude and just start pounding away. You can run away and dodge or like bide your time and figure out a strategy and that kind of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. And because of how kind of open it was, it allowed for a lot of it allowed for so much variety with all the different chapters. And we can go into kind of how the chapters expand on that gameplay and what it does, or that battle system and what it does. But something you mentioned before, Happy, that got me thinking that one of the things that you were interested in was about how the game takes place in multiple time periods, right? There's 7 different time periods,
right, and
then a climactic final chapter. I found an interview with Takashi, where is it? Yeah, Takashi Tokuda, the director. Like this, I think it was right around the time the original version came out. And actually, I guess for the audience, Live Alive originally came out in 1994 on September 2nd, 1994 in Japan, and it didn't get its Switch release. It was only in Japan in 1994 and didn't get put anywhere until 2022 when it came out with the worldwide release in the HD 2D remake. So in that interview, though, from 94, one of the main inspirations for Live Alive was world selection, since most games made by Square at the time were these massive worlds, Final Fantasies. He also, Hanjuku Hero is something he referenced. Tokuda wanted something that could span across multiple worlds. And he toyed with the idea of having us, the player, play each scenario in a specific order, but they ended up scrapping that because that would make every player's experience too similar. And I think I'm kind of in agreement with that. Would you have enjoyed this more if it was a specific order, or did you like the idea that you could just pick any story, it starts off with 6, you end up with 7, but you could pick any story when you started?
Yeah, I like the player freedom that gives people. I know that according to my friend Scala, there is an order that a lot of people like to play in that is not chronological. and even the community will give a recommended order that isn't chronological. I don't remember what it is. I should have asked her. But for my part, I did it chronologically, so it didn't really make a difference to me. It just made sense to sort of progress chronologically. But I do like that they are willing to give that player freedom. I do think that it comes at the cost of maybe some narrative cohesion.
Yes.
But I respect what they were trying to do by giving player choice, and I think it's a bold strategy that a lot of people seem to enjoy. So ultimately, I think it's a good thing.
And I also, like you, I played it in chronological order. I went with prehistory and it just kind of went up through the ages. I'd be curious what like the community recommended order is. That's really interesting. I had never heard of that. Because I actually tried looking it up, and a lot of the things that I saw recommended starting with prehistory or like one of the others, because the battle system, like the difficulty in those was a little bit lower. So that way you could get used to the battle system. So I started with prehistory, and man, let me tell you, some of the prehistory was probably the funniest one by a long shot for me. I'm going to see if I'm literally scrolling through my Blue Sky right now, trying to find the screenshots I posted from it. There's a move that you can get in that game just called Stench Poot.
I remember.
I could not believe my goddamn eyes when I saw that you could have a move that's just a fart, and it's called Stench Poot. I just spit all over the microphone saying poot.
I mean, in solidarity with Stench Poot. You know, Square in 1994 really seemed excited about farting attacks because, you know, Final Fantasy VI also has the Bioblaster. And
oh, yeah.
So I don't know what they were thinking that year. You know, the Flintstones came out that year, so maybe they saw the Flintstones and they thought, wow, wacky Stone Age comedy and farts. Name a more iconic duo. So I don't know.
And I found my screenshots, by the way. Stench Poot, which the description is turn back on many bad and hurt with big poot. Even the descriptions are written in like quote unquote caveman speak, right?
Yeah.
Then his friend, his ally, which I can't remember. I think it's I can't remember any of the characters' names in like half of these. Pogo is the main character, and he has like this ape friend who is, I forget the ape's name, but he gets an ability just called Poop Throw. I wonder what that could mean. Hurt many bad with smelly poop. And then one of my favorite things, the item descriptions. Did you see one of the best art pieces of armor in that chapter? Do you know what
remind me?
A mass of chest hair.
I do remember that.
I just picture like you walk up to a store, you put a couple stones down, and this guy just gives you a pile of hair. And like, here's your defense. I hope this works for you.
That's got to be the thickest hair in the world. And honestly, I respect it. I respect that somebody's willing to put so much hair on their chest that they are protected from bites and clubs and the worst that the caveman era can throw at you.
Now, do you think they wove it together? Do you think they just took hair and glued it to themselves, or do you think they took that hair and like cross-stitched it into something?
I think they absolutely wove it. I think this is the finest artisan chest hair that money can buy, that stones can buy. So
that stones can buy.
Yeah. I mean,
oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, chest hair, 500 stones. For everything else, there's MasterCard.
What's the thread count on this chest hair?
Yeah,
oh my God.
800
Sorry,
thread chest hair. Oh man. Yeah, so this is, we're just channeling the spirit of the prehistory section because I really think it's the most slapstick, intentionally silly part of the game. And then Honestly, it just kind of gets less and less. Well, the near future section also is pretty silly with the kaiju battle, the big robot
I hated
battle.
that section though. I'll be honest, I hated that section.
Yeah, I liked fighting, but there were some things about the mechanics that were kind of annoying. We'll get there, I'm sure, but we're just reflecting the seriousness or the lack of the seriousness of the source material. So
Well, it's funny too because if you play in like that chronological order, don't you, or like the time period order? Once you do, yeah, I'm looking at it on Wikipedia as well. Prehistory is just crazy silly, right? In fact, the last thing I'll shout out about the silliness of it is your ape friend eventually gets his own stench poot attack. And when he does, he flips upside down and his like skirt drops, and there's just a smiley face where his dick would be, and just rips one across. And I was streaming it at the time. I was streaming on Twitch, playing it, and I couldn't believe my eyes. The fact that like the idea that like you get attacked by dogs, and you fart so bad that they just get erased from existence. That's a very like, what kind of existential threat is this stench poot?
seriously,
It's crazy.
that guy has got to start eating more fiber.
Anyway, I'm just picturing. Oh, it's so gross, but it made me laugh so hard. It was so wild because then you go from that. The point I was trying to make. Sorry, I got lost in the smiley face dick. It goes from that to Imperial China. If you're playing it in chronological order, which is one of the most emotional stories in the entire game. That genuinely like that was the closest I've been to crying in a game in a long time, and I don't take that lightly. This isn't like some like weird macho thing. I have a hard time crying in general at like media. It's hard to get me to like tear up. It's easy to get me emotional. It's hard to get me crying. This came very damn close. Like I was really like invested in this story. And we'll get into some of the stories. I think because not every time period has a really engaging story. You know, like I would say the Wild West doesn't have really much of an engaging story. I would say the present day, which is literally just a Street Fighter clone with live alive battle mechanics instead of Street Fighter mechanics. That's not that interesting. There's not really much of a story there.
No.
I guess before we kind of move on then with any, like before we continue on, because I feel like I've been taking up a lot of the conversation here. What's one of your favorite periods? Like what, like we're not going in any specific order. And I guess for my listeners who may not have played it, the different eras are prehistory, which we've talked about extensively and its stinkiness, Imperial China, Twilight of Edo period Japan, Wild West, present day, which I guess would be 1994 present day, but whatever, the near future, the distant future, and then the Middle Ages, which gets unlocked after you beat the first 6. So out of those 7, which one do you want to, feel free to pick one that you want to talk about a little bit?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, I have 2 that I specifically want to talk about. I think the Imperial China one, as you mentioned, is very emotional, and I think it's probably the best story. It tells a very simple story of sacrifice and death and revenge, but also continuing planting the seeds for the next generation. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick before you continue on, I would just want to put this out for all listeners. I think with how we're kind of discussing this, I think it would make sense just to put up a generic spoiler wall here, because I feel like it's hard to talk about each like period without really kind of diving into spoilers, you know? So especially for some of the more emotional ones like this, some of the like better story ones, I think why hold back, right? I'm just going to put a spoiler wall up, so feel free to go as far into this as you like. I just wanted to get that out there in case listeners did not want the story spoiled for them.
Sure. No, that's a great idea, Josh. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of kind of martial arts movies and tropes and things like that. And
I feel you.
I'm also a fan of the Yakuza Like a Dragon series, and weirdly,
Mm-hmm.
Imperial China sort of like reminded me of that. Just with the intensity that the characters express themselves with, the
Mm-hmm.
very like sort of over the top reactions to things, the way that like horrible, awful things casually happen to people and then they're just sort of shrugged off. I don't know. The Imperial China section sort of reminded me of Yakuza for that reason. But also, I mean, I studied in Beijing for a semester, and so, you
Oh.
know, obviously, the Imperial China section is not going to reflect Chinese culture super accurately, but it just, I don't know, even just seeing bamboo and getting to walk around
Mm-hmm.
a representation of a Chinese village, that, I don't know, it just brought me back to this really special time in my life when I got to be a guest in somebody else's country and learn more about them um, and form my own impressions of this country. And it was so I kind of have that personal reason for liking it. Um, the
Yeah.
other the other one that I really enjoyed was, I mean, this is kind of weird, but the present day one where it literally is just Street Fighter. And,
Yeah.
Yoko Shimomura has done the soundtrack for both Street Fighter 2
You're
and
right.
Live Alive.
Mm-hmm.
So she's sort of like getting to remix herself a little bit and maybe do a different take on a game that she'd already worked on. And I don't know, I just thought there was some fun symmetry in that. Um,
It's a good
and
point.
yeah, yeah. And then both for Imperial China and present day, I think I really enjoyed the ways that you learned new skills in that one. It
Mm-hmm.
felt very natural, very fun. It didn't feel like other RPGs. It felt like sort of an original system or way of doing things. It was simple but fun. So I think those are my two. I
Okay.
mean, there were others that were really fun, but I think those two were my favorites. What about you, Josh? Did you have one that really stuck out to you?
Imperial China was definitely one. And I think that one really illustrates a point we had made earlier about how like adaptable the battle system in this game is, because in Imperial China you play as an aging master Shifu, or Sifu. What, I don't know what the proper pronunciation would be, but he is the master of the Earth and Heart martial art, and he has to choose 3 disciples to inherit his skills. So you play as that master throughout the entirety of the chapter, and he can't level up. He's maxed out already. And so you go through that chapter just blowing over dudes. Like, it's easy as all get out. But but as the chapter goes on, his moves get a little bit weaker. He moves a little bit slower. And so they use the gameplay to illustrate the narrative, which I think is really cool. And you don't see that a lot. Like, Final Fantasy dabbled with that, but it was always going to be like I think of the, is it Tella or whatever it is from Final Fantasy 4 or whatever? I forget if I think it's from Final Fantasy 4, the old man from 4, where he's got all his skills, but like he's an older man, so it's harder for him to learn, type of thing. It was, they dabble with that, but he was a side character. This was a focal story. Like, he was like, Shifu is, the story is focused on him and him trying to pass down his skills to the last of his disciples. And it's a really beautiful story because, once again, slight spoiler alert, well, not slight, very hard spoiler alert for this chapter. He ends up failing his disciples, and 2 out of his 3 disciples are murdered. And it is interesting, depending on like how you play, it determines which one of the disciples stays alive, which I did not know that. I always went with like the weak kid. I think that's what the kind of intended was. You had like one dude who was like really strong, and they had this girl who was really fast, and you had this kid who was kind of in the middle who was like, he had heart. Like if it's the Captain Planet analogy here, he was the heart one. And it really was such a beautiful story at how it happens. And so he vows to avenge them, and it's I'm getting emotional thinking about it. And he ends up passing in the end. Like he is able to avenge them, but he ends up passing, but he is able to to teach his greatest move to the remaining disciple, and that's the disciple that survives, obviously. I also really liked that one was I liked for that reason. Like it surprised me at how emotional it was. Like when I was playing it, I was genuinely shocked because I was not expecting it to go to that place. Especially after prehistory, which was just so silly. And there's no stench poots in Imperial China. Let me tell you, it's all just sad poots.
There's no farting in really Imperial China.
I feel like that's a long lost book of fake history. There's no farting in Imperial China.
Exactly.
But no, then another one I really ended up liking, I liked The Distant Future, because once again, that also surprised me with the seriousness of it. And also, it really did something completely different with the battle system in that there's almost no combat until the very end, which is really interesting. But the other one I'll shout out because I think I want to go into The Distant Future a little bit later. The Wild West. I'm a fan of Westerns. I love Western movies. Even though, as an adult, I realize there's a lot of problematic stuff in some of those old ones, but I love Western movies. And so this one was very much in that, it gave a really great Wild West vibe. They did kind of like an interpretation of the Magnificent Seven or whatever, where Magnificent Seven, if you think of A Bug's Life, that's also a kind of interpretation of that. But or Seven Samurai is also another. I don't know which came first. Did Seven Samurai come first or the Magnificent Seven? I don't fucking know.
Seven Samurai did, because that's 1954. I think so too. And I thought Magnificent Seven was maybe later in the 50s.
I think you're right. Because that goes back and forth with one of my favorite things. It's funny. This is a very slight tangent. While I'm looking up when the original Magnificent Seven came out, is 1960. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Seven Samurai, or what is it? Seven Samurai?
Seven Samurai, yeah.
Yeah, that came out in 54. Yeah, so cool. Very clearly, Seven Samurai influenced. Oh my gosh, the Magnificent Seven. And actually, it's literally in the Wikipedia thing. It's a remake of Akira Kurosawa's 1954 film. Anyway, the very first convention I ever went to, it was an anime convention, and there was a panel about the cultural exchanges between Japanese pop culture and American pop culture, and they talk about how things go back and forth. If you look at Westerns, like John Ford Westerns in the 30s, it influenced Akira Kurosawa. Akira Kurosawa clearly influenced the Magnificent Seven, which then, of course, was A Bug's Life as well. And then also Akira Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress is a direct inspiration for Star Wars. And so you get it. I always find that stuff really interesting. So with this chapter of Live Alive, it's like instead of the Magnificent Seven, it's the Magnificent One, sort of. But he kind of basically, you play as this lone gunslinger who goes into town, and the town is being attacked by bandits, so he helps the town folk set booby traps. You direct them to do booby traps, and this was kind of fun because you could one guy was like, I'm really fast, other guy, so you would always give them the most time-consuming task, or what you thought would be the most time-consuming task, to go set up these explosives in the ground, or one was hang a poster of a nude lady to distract the cowboys as they're riding into town. I'm like, all right, sure, why not? And it was weird seeing all the explosions because horses just start flying all over the place. So it was kind of wild to see. It was really nuts, but it was a very fun chapter. And in fact, it so much so it got me, I started watching, I never finished it, but a Netflix limited series called Godless, because it's, Westerns and stuff like that. So it got me in the mood to watch a Western. So it achieved its goal of trying to do the Western vibe, or like give a Western vibe.
I agree.
And something we probably should have mentioned at the top, as we listed all the different time periods. Each time period is designed by a famous manga artist. Imperial China was done by Yoshihide Fujiwara. Prehistory was Yoshinori Kobayashi. The Wild West was Osamu Ichiwata. Distant Future was Yumi Tamura. Present Day was Ryoji Minagawa. The Twilight of Edo Japan is Gosho Ayama. And the Near Future was Kazuhiko Shimamoto. Don't know if I pronounced any of those correctly, but it was kind of cool that they got famous manga artists for each chapter as to do a design, or to design the characters and everything with it. Though apparently one of them, I don't know well enough, but apparently one of them is like crazy problematic. I don't know which one it is anymore, but apparently one of them is like, I don't even want to speculate because I don't want to say like this one, but I on stream someone was telling me that like one of them is like really problematic in some way. I don't know if it's like a war crime apologist or something like that. I forget exactly what it was or who it was, so I'm not going to speculate. But if any of y'all are interested and feel like doing research, go to Wikipedia. You can find their names. So yeah, I would say those two scenarios were some of my favorites. The Imperial China and then the Wild West. But I enjoyed all of them for the most part, with the exception of Near Future. I thought was a little bit long. And we can transition that into some of our least favorite time periods. All right, we touched on some of our favorites. What are some of your least favorite ones, Happy?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, Edo Japan section, incredible graphics. The gameplay was really hard. I'm not super into like stealth gameplay. And there was one part of the infiltrator section where you get cast into a dungeon and you have to fight this really difficult enemy. And I just could not figure out how to do it. It was so hard. And then finally chat had to be like, okay, Happy Bear, this is what you need to do. And I was like, that's not obvious at all. And I'm trying to remember what the actual solution is. I think you have to hit it in a certain way or something like that. But that was really frustrating for me. So yeah, the gameplay for that one just didn't really click with me like it did for Imperial China, and even the prehistory section. I didn't love the prehistory section, but it was kind of the introduction to the battle system for me. And hi, your girl is a turn-based RPG enthusiast, specifically a turn-based strategy RPG like Fire Emblem.
Okay.
Yeah, huge Fire Emblem fan here. Yeah, Live Live kind of brought me back to those games a little bit with the battle system, so I loved it for that. So prehistory, even though I didn't totally love that chapter, it was kind of saved for me because it was the first one that I played. So Imperial Japan I didn't love, and then the Middle Ages chapter, honestly. So yeah, again, if you're still listening and you don't want a major spoiler for later in the game, please stop listening now. But once you've beaten the first 7 chapters, then number 8 opens up and it's the Middle Ages. And
again,
yeah,
because technically you get the Middle Ages once, which I actually like the story for the Middle Ages the first time, but the second time I'm like, God damn, I already did this.
Right. Wait, what's the first Middle Ages chapter?
The first Middle Ages one is the one where you play as the Knight Orsted and you defeat Strabo, and then for the hand in the princesses in the or sorry, for the hand of the princess in marriage. Very medieval kind of selling your daughter off for wedding things. It's kind of weird. But and then she gets kidnapped by the Lord of Dark and you have to go rescue her. Then here's the big spoiler, y'all. For when you do that though, you Strabo and I think a couple other and like this great hero named, oh my gosh, what is his name? I can't remember his name, but that you and this great hero, you go and you fight the great demon, only to find out that you go to fight him and you feel like you've defeated him, but it's surprisingly easy. So as you're leaving, the Strabo, the guy who helped you with, the guy you defeated in the duel for this princess's hand in marriage, he succumbs to like basically the cave collapses and he dies. So you go back thinking that you defeated him, but you don't know, you weren't able to rescue the princess whose name is Alethea. And when you go back to the castle, though, you're tricked. Orsted is tricked by a magical illusion into killing the king, and everyone denounces him as a demon, and he escapes. And only to find out that Strabo actually faked his own death, also gave him the illusion that he killed, that the king was like this evil lord. And so basically, not only does Strabo fake his own death, he takes your girl and also puts you in a position of like, you're this monster, even though you're just doing what you were kind of like, you're trying to be the hero, everything that you expected. It's trying to turn the hero's narrative on its head, where everything you think you're doing is the right thing turns out like you're just being played the whole time. And then the plot twist at the end of it, there's a second plot twist after you find out that Strabo is alive. You go back and you fight Strabo and you kill him, but Alethea blames you for Strabo's actions, and then she kills herself right in front of you. So so Strabo's dead because you killed him, even though he faked his own death earlier. Alethea, the princess you were trying to marry, is now dead because she just Romeo and Julieted herself right on top of her, right on top of Strabo. And Orsted basically is like, fuck this, and becomes the Lord of Dark because he's like, I'm so mad now. Like, I'm vilified here and vilified here. I was just doing the right thing. If you want me to be the bad guy, fine, I'll be the bad guy. So he becomes the bad guy. And that's how the Middle Ages chapter end. I really like that plot twist because then it's the final chapter, which is called the Dominion of Hate or whatever.
Yeah, it is, I think, an all-timer plot twist, honestly. It's one of the best things about Live Alive. I will say, I think that first Middle Ages chapter goes on a little bit too long. I think it's too long, by about an hour.
I'm with you.
They really sort of like, it feels like kind of thin beer for what it is. But honestly, as we're talking about it now, it's not that bad. But you're right. The Dominion of Hate chapter, that is where it bogs down. So what you have to do is you have to go find each of your previous protagonists from the prior 7 chapters, and it drags
They're, for some reason, magically transported over into the Middle Ages, and you don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you eventually do learn why, but I think it would have been a lot more impactful if all of them had just sort of been transported to fight this final baddie, and then just kind of had the knockdown, drag out final battle. But instead, you have to fight each of the forms of the villain from the prior chapters. Now, this is one of the things, Josh, that I think is maybe a little bit silly about the game. Just kind of jumping back for a moment.
Go for it.
in every chapter, then the villain has a name that either is Odio or is sort of a play off that. So the T-Rex in the prehistory chapter, the first boss that you fight is called Odo. And
I
then,
feel so fucking stupid. I did not notice that.
Yeah, it's
continue.
It's
Oh my
bonkers, honestly. And then in the present day chapter, then the evil fighter that you face is Odie O'Bright. Sort of, I don't know, he's of Irish descent or something. And the way that the voice actor in the remake yells it, the way that he is just like, my name is Odie O'Bright, and he's just like screaming at the top of his lungs. It was not an Oscar-winning performance. We'll just leave it at that. It's very silly. I mean, I guess it is sort of a little bit like 80s, 90s anime-ish, which maybe is what they were going for, and that's fine. But I just found it unbearably cheesy. So you have to fight one of these Odio manifestations, and you don't really understand why they're all named that when you go through the first 7 chapters. And then you get to the Middle Ages, and the protagonist of the 8th chapter becomes Odio, which, again, is a great plot twist. But then you realize that he's been sending sort of his avatars throughout time to try to ruin time, essentially, and to spread hatred in the world. Again, this is not an Oscar-winning screenplay, but the revelation that it's all Odio, I think, it's a good one. The revelation of how all these people, all these creatures are named Odio. But then in the final chapter, chapter 9, Dominion of Hate, then you have to fight all of them again. It's in sort of like a boss rush almost. And
man. Yeah.
It's too much. It's too much. And the ending, honestly, is not that good for what you get. And Josh, you haven't seen the ending. I have. And it's basically just Odio being like, damn, I fucked up. And I really shouldn't have done what I did. Go back to your time periods. Don't hate anybody. Don't be like I was. And then roll credits. And then I think it does give little montages of the characters kind of back in their respective times, sort of like Chrono Trigger. But it's not that worth it, honestly. The final credits theme is really good. But it's not. I don't think it's worth suffering through like another 3 or 4 hour chapter 9. So anyway, I have a lot of thoughts about the ending of the game, as you can see. I'm very opinionated about it.
It's a podcast. That's what I'm with you on that too, because like I think what kills me about the final chapter is that the one of the things that this game was designed around was that each chapter is meant to be played in a single sitting. The idea that they like each time period, like, yeah, there's 6 or 7 of them, but you could beat each one in about 2 to 3 hours, right? It was meant to be designed by that. And the final one just doesn't feel like that, because from my understanding, like, did you have to find like the special armor for everybody too, or did you just get a party and just go whoop the boss's butt? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think that I got some of the armor. I don't think I got all of it. I mean, it certainly made the final boss battles easier, but yeah, just it felt like sort of a betrayal of the game's core conceit, which is that these are bite-sized stories that all sort of come together at the end. You know, each one is about 2 hours. I think it took me 2.5 hours for each one. Streaming, a lot of the time, it makes games take 50% longer than you expect.
Yes.
But, you know, each one was still 2 or 3 hours for me. And then Middle Age chapter is, I think it's like 3 to 4 hours. And then Dominion of Hate is another 4 to 5. And so that really stretched it out in a way that was sort of unwelcome and unexpected. for me, because I was like, okay, you know, I'm sort of approaching the end of the game. I imagine there'll be sort of like a final 8th chapter to kind of tie it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly, chapter 8 is really long. And then there's another chapter 9. I think I spent like 7 hours on the final stream just because I wanted to get it done that night. And it was
That's crazy.
It was brutal. It was brutal, Josh. It really was.
I think that's what is so frustrating is like one of the biggest killers for me that like makes me stop playing a game at the end is pacing, where it's like you get used to a specific pace and all of a sudden the game's like, side note, we're going to slow it down to a crawl. And it's going to take, and you're like, if it's long, I can manage with, it's not my favorite, but I can manage with that if the game still feels like it's going at a good pace. But this isn't. You have to aimlessly explore there's a couple things that'll give you directions in it, but like you have to kind of aimlessly explore the Middle Ages part, which you already experienced beforehand. Though at least this time you get to fight enemies from all the different like time periods,
True.
which is kind of cool. You get items from all the different time periods and all the different storylines, which is really cool. I think in its idea, the concept of it, I thought was really cool. I like their attempt to connect all these stories together with this overarching theme. And I think the idea of the overarching theme, is really cool as well. The idea of that hate can spread so easily, it can literally spread across time periods. Kind of also even commenting, maybe, I don't know if this was intentional, but the idea of how like hate from generations ago can still bleed through today.
Absolutely.
You know, like old generational animosities and stuff like that. So I like the themes, I like the message, and I like the concept of how they were going to do this. The actual implementation is where you and I both, I think, agree is where it falters. I don't know if you like the concept as much as I do, but at least with the implementation, I know we both agree it's way too long. Like you said, if you wanted to do a big final battle, like you're going to go fight the King of Darkness now, or the King of Hate, Odio, and that's totally cool. And also doing that plot twist in the Middle Ages chapter where the hero becomes the next like avatar for hate. It's a really cool idea. And they even play with that. I was reading on Wikipedia, like the final part is like, if you recruit every character at least once, like, so normally you just pick your 4 and you can go, but if you recruit every character at least once, and if you recruit a character when you're already maxed out, you have to kick out one of the previous party members. But if you recruit every character at least once, then when you beat Odio or Orsted as Odio, Orsted's hate manifests into a demon called Sin of Odio that initially overwhelms the party. I'm reading this straight out of Wikipedia. Initially overwhelms the party, but Orsted breaks free with their help and destroys it. And a repentant and dying Orsted send each protagonist back to their time periods, warning them that hate can create another Dark Lord. So the idea of like this generational hate of Odio can be recreated if they don't care for one another, type of thing. Really cool idea. Hate the implementation. Absolutely can't stand it.
Yeah.
That's what really killed it for me. It was like at this point it kind of reminds me to a much lesser degree what frustrated me with like the Lord of the Rings Return of the King, where it's like there's like every time you think the movie's over, just kidding,
Yeah.
here's another 30 minutes. That's kind of like what this game is. You beat the 6 chapters, beat the 6 time periods. Just kidding. There's the Dark Ages. I'm like, okay, fine. Actually, pretty cool story. All right, beat this. All right, we're good to go. Just kidding. Yeah. Here's a final chapter. I'm like, God damn it. And if you play it as Orsted, if you choose Orsted as his final chat, like instead of like. When you play the final chapter, you choose one of the 7 characters, and then when you pick them, you have to go around the Middle Ages world that you saw earlier, and you have to find them to add them to your party. However, if you choose Orsted, who was the hero of the Middle Ages and then turned evil, then it's taking that same story from the opposite perspective, where you're killing all of them, which is kind of interesting. And I like that as an extra added bonus if you want to do that. But it's just one too many times. Don't triple fake me like this. you can get away with that in a boss because you're already locked into a boss battle. But when you do it with like a game where it's like, just kidding, here's another 4 to 5 hours, you thought you were done. Nope, you still have more to that. Very few games I think can pull that off. Red Dead Redemption is the only one that has ever made me like tolerate it, and even then it's still not my favorite in those games. Where have you played either of the Red Deads?
I haven't actually.
Okay,
so
I won't spoil anything for you because it's great.
For me.
I won't spoil them for you if you ever decide to play them. They're good. They're good games, like good stories. But both of them, you finish the storyline, and then there's like an extra like 40 minutes to an hour of gameplay, which has like, it lulls you into a false sense of security, and then something else happens, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
But it's pretty cool. And this one, I don't think it does that well, and it's frustrating because a lot of the different chapters are really fun. One thing I want to shout out, just because I took a whole bunch of notes from that interview. I mentioned before, the near future chapter wasn't my favorite. It's a very kind of like you said, it was kaiju. It's kind of, the main character's name is Akira, kind of doing like an Akira, I'm guessing based off the movie Akira or the manga Akira as well. One of the notes that I saw for that, which made me laugh really hard, was where are we at? Here's a clip from the interview. It was with Yukiko Sasaki, she is an artist, Fumiyaki Fukaya, who is a programmer, and then Takashi Tokida, and who is the director, and then there's one other artist in this interview, Takaharu Tanaka. And the question from the interviewer was asking the artist Yukiko Sasaki, what excited you most about this project? She replies, what indeed? And then Fukaya, the programmer, goes, you drew that Western style toilet very well. And they just start laughing. And Sasaki replies, there's an incredible number of toilets in this game. And I went, what? I'm like, you're right. Because there's specifically in the near future scene, and Tokida calls it out, we didn't have the details of the specific scenes written out yet. And when I looked at the art Sasaki had drawn, there were a lot of toilets. So I said, let's make a scene where something happens when you sit on a toilet. Sasaki continues. So Sasaki replies to the director Tokida and says, in normal role-playing games, you don't get to see normal houses, but normal houses have toilets, baths, washing machines, and refrigerators. I thought it would have been a shame if that bathroom, which I carefully made out all those little sprites, wouldn't have been used in a scene. But thankfully, it made it all in the end. And then the other artist in the interview that Takaharu Tanaka said, I restarted the game from the beginning thanks to that, though. So there's just a lot of toilets in this game. Apparently, Yukiko Sasaki just drew a lot of sprite art toilets, and the guy was like, that's going to be a whole scene, goddammit, and they put it into the game.
I love it. I love it.
So funny.
This game has farting. It has toilets. It has monkeys flinging poop. What more do you need out of a video game?
Generational trauma. It's got it all. From stench poop to trauma. It's a live
chapter,
story.
The chapter where almost everybody dies.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got like the kaiju toilet chapter, and then the chapter where a monster breaks out and is having horrible things done to it. And then you've got Erstead, who's having maybe the worst day in the history of days. So yeah, this game definitely like ping pongs between emotional states and tones very, very easily, which I think is maybe part of the appeal. It's part of the secret sauce of this game. I think this would be a different and perhaps lesser game if the tone were more unified.
Yeah, because they even do like a horror type of vibe too. Like with the distant future, it's very kind of Alien. Like for those who've seen the movie Alien, basically it's there's a cargo ship carrying this giant monster to Earth, and you play as a little maintenance robot cube, maintenance robot just called Cube, and you end up investigating an incident where the monster escapes, and ship members are getting murdered and this and that. And once again, spoiler alert, you kind of see it coming if you've seen any pop culture over the last like 50 years, where it's a very Space Odyssey or whatever, 3000, whatever, what was that movie? Space Odyssey
2001.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Yeah, Space Odyssey 2001, where who's doing all this? Who's pitting each other against each other? It's the AI computer. It's very kind of on the nose, but it still does I don't know. I thought I was very surprised by how much they endear the characters to you in this and how well written the characters were in that chapter. So for every stench poot chapter you have your Imperial China, you have your distant future, then you just have ones that like they're just fun. Like, and we already talked about the present day. That was one of your favorites. It's just a straight up, there's no plot to it. It's just this guy wants to be the strongest. He's going to beat the shit out of everybody who makes him stronger. And that's the entire plot. Another quick fun fact, since I mentioned just a little bit ago about the toilet graphics, something I thought that was interesting. Tokita, the director, stated in the interview that he was kind of the do-it-all guy for this game, but there was one area he didn't help out with that he wanted to, and that was graphics. And it was because when he first started at Square, he got started with graphics. That was like one of his first roles at working at Square back in the 80s. But he said like he couldn't do it because graphics had evolved so much between the last time he did graphics and this, that like he couldn't keep up. And what did he say? He tried and felt it was too far out of the loop with how far advanced graphics had become, and felt it was over his head, even though he got his start in the industry with graphics. This is stuff I wrote. I'm paraphrasing an interview. And something that really shocked me about that, I was like, that's really saying something about how fast technology changed back then, because this game came out in 94. The last game that I saw in Moby Games, I looked at his credits on Moby Games, and the last game he did has like art credits for before I guess he kind of did newer stuff. But the last game he had arts credits for before this game in 94 only came out in 1989. And this game was in development for a year and 4 months. So if you take back a year from September 94, so it started in like early to mid September 1993, right? So he had only not been like working on graphics for like 4 years or so, which now I can't imagine like you would lose that much skill. But like, I guess Game Boy to Super Nintendo was just a huge technological leap in terms of the programming tools and I guess the art tools that were used for it. Because when he said that, I was just like, really? It wasn't like, this is 94. Like, there's no way you could have been out of like the art game for that long. And he wasn't. It was only 4 years. But wow. Yeah, for the layman who doesn't know the in-depth of it, like talking about myself here, to me that just seems like it would illustrate how fast technology changed, I guess, because like I can't imagine why else would he have such a hard time adjusting to it. I'm sure he could have learned, but since he was the director, he just felt like, all right, my skills aren't up to snuff with this. That's interesting to me.
No, that's fascinating. That is so. I mean, it just, you can't imagine the technological progress that's happening back in the late 80s, early 90s as far as video games, just something new every day. And I think we kind of take it for granted now that, game technology advancements have maybe slowed down a little bit. But it was just a new thing every day back then. I mean, I would get an issue of Nintendo Power back then, and it seems like every other issue was a new console being announced, or, a new fun thing that you could do with games. And yeah, so it was tremendously exciting, but I didn't honestly realize that there was kind of a dark side sometimes for that level of change. So yeah, that's an interesting quote.
That's really crazy. And it's interesting because, you think about it like the PlayStation 4, right? That console came out in 2013, 2013, right? So it's 12 years old, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, well.
But the leap between 4 and 5, while you can see it, it's not nearly as big versus the NES. well, the Famicom, I guess, originally came out in 83, but for all intents and purposes, it came out in 83, and then the Super Nintendo came out in like 1990, and then the Super Nintendo to the N64 was 96. So there's like 5 to 6 year gaps usually between these, and like within 2 generations you had 3D graphics versus now like late stage PS3 still looks pretty decent. It's crazy to see how fast it just really changed. Like I forget what it was. I saw like a Blue Sky post or something like that, where it's like the time between now and like the last Super Nintendo game, or sorry, the last Game Boy game is like the same amount of time between the last Game Boy. I forget what it was. It was like when the last Game Boy game came out, like Game Boy Color in like the early 2000s. So you're looking at like 20 years ago, right? And if you go 20 years prior to that, you're looking at Pong. Well, not Pong. You're looking at Donkey Kong, like the original Donkey Kong. Mm-hmm. So it's just crazy to see how fast everything changed in such a short amount of time. Anyway, I don't have much else to talk about in terms of the gameplay with this, and I feel like we already kind of dabbled with the story a lot with it as well. But is there anything else you wanted to touch on with any of the stuff we've been talking about? Any parts that we glossed over? Are there any other parts with the battle system? I guess we didn't really talk about how we talked about how the battle system worked in terms of the grid combat, but we didn't really go into like how the abilities work or anything like that. Yeah. Is there anything you want to talk? I can go into the abilities if you'd like, but is there anything you would like to talk about that we haven't really touched on just yet in terms of the gameplay or story?
Yeah. The only other thing I was going to say about the battle system is that I think that Square had to simplify their battle systems a little bit in order to make them work across time periods. Mm-hmm. You can't have 7 like complicated Final Fantasy VI magic and sword active time battle systems.
Yeah.
You have to simplify it a little bit, which I actually think works in this game's favor as far as accessibility. This is a game that I would recommend to people who might be new to the RPG genre. If just to say, you can kind of get a sampling of a lot of different battle styles and a lot of different RPG tropes and plots. It really is like a charcuterie board of RPGs. And I
love that description. A charcuterie board of RPGs is like, that's a perfect description for this game.
I agree. If you like traditional sword and sorcery RPGs, there's something here for you. If you like sort of like modern day style RPGs, you're a fan of like Earthbound or something, then you know what? There's the distant future and the present day chapters. If you really like martial arts epics and you wish that there was a full-on martial arts RPG, well, Imperial China might be your thing. So I think that this is a really good one for maybe casual RPG enthusiasts or newbies. And I think that the battle system is a big part of that. I found it very accessible. I found it very fun. Again, as I mentioned, a Fire Emblem fan. I don't know. I think that it was a good experience for me. I don't remember a lot of the specific techniques or attacks, just because I didn't have 30 hours to get them all in my brain. I had 2 or 3 hours for each chapter.
Well, what I was going to say, what's interesting about the way that the moves and techniques work in this is that each one it's kind of like you mentioned before, you're a fan of like tactical RPGs, and I guess that makes sense why you enjoyed this so much, because it is a really good hybrid of tactical RPGs and your standard kind of like active time battle, Final Fantasy turn-based RPGs, right? Because it's did I say turn-based? I don't fucking know what I said anymore. But you know what I'm trying to say. Like you're like between your standard Final Fantasies and then you're like Fire Emblems, right? Like it's a good cross between the two of them. Because I said grid-based RPGs. That's what I said. Sorry, I was second guessing myself. But yeah, because you can just move around on the grid freely, and then you have different ranges like you would in like a grid turn-based RPG like Fire Emblem or something like that. Like, you know, some of your characters have range attacks, and if the enemy is within that, within a certain number of squares, that attack will not work. So you have to be able to like pick and choose when you want to do your different moves. And also, like, if it is your turn, you can move away quickly, and if you move fast enough, it kind of gives the player a little bit more agency, because if you're fast, you can just, you know, you can move a bunch of times before the enemy has a chance to move again, and then you're able to do a ranged attack before they can attack you. Or if you find the right thing that can interrupt their abilities, which there's a boss, I forget which boss of a chapter it was. I remember it was a really tough boss, and I was able to get them locked into a cycle where they kept trying to do this big bombastic move that probably would have wrecked me, but I kept doing a move that interrupted it. So I would interrupt it, do another move, interrupt it, do another move. And so like every other turn, I would just constantly interrupt it, and they would never able to get an attack in edgewise. And so I one-shotted the boss in like 2 seconds. I really wish I remember what the boss was. I could probably go back to my VODs on Twitch and find them. But
is it the frog one?
It might have been.
It seems like I was doing that on the frog, but I'd have to.
Which one had the frog?
Japan. Where
I think it might have been Japan. I was literally thinking, like, I feel like that was Japan.
Yeah, it's ringing the bell for me. I don't remember that with any of the other final bosses, but I think you can get the frog into kind of a sort of a loop. Yeah, it's that guy who like drinks the evil potion or something, and then he turns into this massive frog dude. I think my entire chat was like, "What that tongue doing, frog?"
Yes.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's really funny. Okay, I think that's all I really had for the gameplay and whatnot. I don't really have much else to add, because like normally I would go into visuals and music, but we already talked about how great Yoko Shimomura's soundtrack is. It's phenomenal. It's great. The visuals are great in the 2D HD. I look back even on the Super Famicom one, and it still looks really good. It's Super Famicom, like Square Soft graphics. So like if you like, you know, your old Super Famicom or Super Nintendo Squaresoft RPGs, you're gonna like this too. I don't really have much else to dive into this. Is there any final? I guess we can move into final thoughts then. And before we do that, so I can give you some time to also to think about some of your final thoughts about the game. One final fun fact that I have for this. On the interview that I was referencing, shout out to shmuppalations.com, great website for looking at like translated interviews and everything. This was kind of cool. In 1994, Square held a promotional stamp rally event for Live Alive, and the goal was to find the 7 hero stamps hidden among the stations of the Odaku line. But people who visited all 69 stations were eligible for the raffle as well, and they could win a copy of the game and special merchandise. So I kind of love this idea of like, if you can go on a scavenger hunt on a train line in Japan, and like, I don't know where the Odaku line was, because, you know, I'm not in Japan at all, and that's spelled Odakyu, and just in case I'm mispronouncing it, anyone wants to look it up themselves. But yeah, they had a promotional event, and that's kind of awesome. I wish more games did shit like that here in North America, man. Like, there's always seemed like there's some fun promotional event with stuff like that for games, and this was happening back in like 94, right? Like, I can't imagine that type of thing happening in North America at all. I don't feel like we would have had big promotion, especially for RPGs in 1994. Though with that said, Nintendo Power did do that Summer of Fantasy where you could win like a trip to an island and basically LARP or something like that. But anyway, that's the last fun fact. I just thought that was kind of cool. The promotional rally was kind of dope. So yeah, I'll throw it over to you, Happy. Final thoughts on the game and any other final things you want to touch on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've covered a lot. I think, you know, we've criticized the game a little bit tonight, and I think we've had some good criticisms, but I think that the highest tribute that you can pay to this game is that it inspired Toby Fox in a lot of different ways.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Specifically, Toby Fox played this game and really loved the final boss theme that plays at the end of each chapter. That final boss theme's name,
Yes.
Megalomania. And so Toby, there were a couple different influences that he used for Megalovania, but Live Alive is one of them. And he just thought that this game's music was so good that he wanted to incorporate it into an Earthbound hack that he did. And then that didn't work out. So he ended up putting his own music into the game, music which would eventually become Megalovania. But Live Alive, in a way, is directly responsible for all the Undertale fandom chaos and the brain damage, the emotional damage that we all got from Undertale.
That's a backlog blind spot for me. I own it and have yet to play Undertale.
Undertale is the only game that has ever made me rage on stream.
Oh, okay.
So I will try to couch this in the most generic terms, but there's a choice that you can make earlier in the game that radically affects how the ending goes, and I didn't understand that, and I was so angry about it that I raged and I cried on stream. And that's the only time that that's ever happened. I mean, I've cried on stream, but I have never angry cried.
Yeah.
And so then I went back and I replayed the game on stream the next week and had a much better experience with it. And so I now respect Toby Fox as sort of a mad genius. And I really appreciate what he did, but Live Alive affected him in such a way as to eventually create this wild experience that a lot of us have had and enjoyed. So you got to give a lot of credit to Live Alive and especially Yoko Shimomura. But honestly, that's the best tribute that I can give to this game, is that somebody else was so inspired by this game that they made a really beautiful and infuriating and emotional cultural experience that many gamers have enjoyed and connected with. So that's all I have to say about this game.
That's beautiful. I love that. Because it's funny when you mentioned that. I remember when I was playing this, I'm like, because I've heard Megalovania a lot, because music from Undertale is all over the place.
Sure.
And so when I heard the boss theme, I'm like, this sounds like Undertale to me. Even though once again, never played it, but I've heard the music. It makes a lot more sense. So thank you. That paints a better picture in my head.
You're welcome.
As for myself, yeah, I'm with you. I think this game is actually really good. I know we've criticized the final parts of it, but I really think the battle system is really strong in this. I think what you said, Happy, how it's a great introduction to JRPGs for those who have not played it before. If you're looking for a more story-based thing, I would not recommend this, but it's the individual stories that are still pretty good for the most part. There's obviously a handful that we already touched on that aren't. But at least a handful of the chapters of the individual stories are really good. The battle system is really simplistic but really solid. Because it's, every character just learns abilities at different intervals unless there's a story reason why they don't learn abilities or they level up slower. Because, like I mentioned in the Imperial China with the master, he's already at the highest level, he can't go any higher, type of thing. Really cool stuff like that. So this game was cool. To me, more than anything, I think this game's awesome because it experiments with a lot of different ideas, and I applaud any big developer experimenting. I mean, granted, this was done back in 1994 when they had a little bit more leeway. Budgets weren't nearly as high, but I think it's important for developers to kind of branch out and try new and weird things, even if they don't end up working all the way. I would say this works more than it doesn't, and I think it's worth playing just to experience the different storylines and how they attempt to connect it all together and everything. It's worth it. And the crazy thing is, as much as we spoiled some stuff, I really don't think it would spoil the experience of the game. I do think like not like knowing some of the emotional gut punches prior to that might be a little bit of a like kind of takes away a smidge, but like for the most part the game plays the same regardless, and it's worth checking out. So I'm with you. I'm happy I got to experience this once again, no pun intended. And it was fun to play. Even though I did not beat it, I got up literally I assembled the 4 party members in that final chapter. And I was like, man, I don't feel like fucking leveling up and grinding, trying to get their special items. Like I just was done at that point. I'm like, I just don't care enough. Like
sure.
The story hasn't intrigued me enough. So that was my final kind of like send off with it. But yeah, this game rules. It's worth checking out if you're an RPG fan. Absolutely worth playing. So yeah, I think that will do it. I think that's a good place to close out this conversation. Thank you once again for joining me on this episode. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast. Hope to have you on again. I would love to have you on to talk more RPGs or any other games that you'd be interested. But for my listeners, if they are to find you online, where can they find you online? And is there anything you would like to promote?
Absolutely. So I am on Twitch at twitch.tv/happybearcares. I am on Blue Sky as well. Love connecting with people on Blue Sky. That's how Josh and I connected. And we are on the Twitch channel right now. We're taking a bit of an RPG break to do Hollow Knight. By the time this episode goes up, we'll probably be done. But it is a first playthrough of Hollow Knight, which I'm really enjoying. And we're also doing our very first Pokemon Nuzlocke ever.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, we've got a Gligar on a pacer right now. I think we've beaten 3 out of the 8 gyms. So yeah, we're doing great with that. Other than that, I keep a pretty low social media profile. Blue Sky and Twitch are my only major social media. I do occasionally release a video on YouTube, but it's they're few and far between. Hopefully I can get you a video out by the end of the month. But we'll see. But yeah, Josh, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you to the listeners of the Still Loading podcast for letting me come and chat about Live Alive for a while. This has been a lot of fun. And I think that the name of this episode should be There's No Farting in Imperial China. You name it what you want, but that's my vote.
I usually just name it the title of the game. But maybe so I have buddies who do a podcast called Retro Hangover, and they kind of do like those type they'll have like a joke line, as it'll be like Super Mario Brothers and then have some type of joke. So maybe I'll start adopting their naming moniker and call it Live Alive. There's no farting in like Imperial China, and see where
very good.
See what so we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I will include links in the show notes to everywhere you can find Happy Bear on Blue Sky and on Twitch. So make sure you go check those out and give her a follow on all those locations. For myself, you can follow me on Blue Sky at stillloadingpodcast.com, on Instagram at stillloadingpod, technically on Facebook at stillloadingpod, but I don't really, it's literally, Instagram automatically sends stuff over there. I don't really check it, but if you're on Facebook, it's there. And then on Twitch at Still Loading Pod, where I stream whenever the hell I'm able to or feel up to it. So yeah, I don't have a consistent stream schedule. It's just if you want to know when I go live, feel free to follow me over there. If you would like to support the show, probably the easiest way to do that is to give it a 5-star rating or review on whichever podcasting app you use, because that helps more people find the show, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy, and I like feeling warm and fuzzy. You can also support the show over on Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For only $1 a month, you get all the episodes a little bit earlier with better audio quality. as well as access to patron voting rights, which picked this game, which picked the entirety of Backlog Month. So if you want to help, if you want to vote, help guide the direction of the show, you can do that for only $1 a month. For $3 a month, you get all the stuff in the previous tier, plus patron shoutouts, which you heard at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you get all the previous 2 tiers, plus 2 mini bonus episodes every month. And for $5 a month, you get all of it, all the previous tiers, plus access to my monthly movie podcast, which, if I'm doing this correctly, this month, it's October. This is the finale of Still Family, my monthly Fast and Furious movie podcast, where all the guests who join me aren't just friends, they're family. So all of the Fast and Furious movies will have been covered. I've done all the James Bond movies as well over there. What's the next movie series franchise I'm going to do? I don't know. I've said like 6 different things over the course of recording episodes over the last couple months, and I keep changing my damn mind. So we'll see what happens when I start it. But that's all over there at $5 a month, and that can be found at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. And that's it. That is all the time I have for you on this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all once again for listening. Happy, thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you, Josh.
And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.